So, as you may or may not know, I'm very inspired by the idea of 3D printing molecules, a molecular 3D printing, since I think this would totally transform the drugs trade. It would, transform pharmacological research and so on. Um, it would liberate the drugs trade, if nothing else. If no other innovation would, that certainly would. Making the chemical codes of or the chemical formulae for opium or something, or morphine or diamorphine, open source and publicly available, or available via the dark web even. And you can just type it into a program and get a 3D printer to print your morphine for you, essentially. I think if we can be doing that at any stage, one day we'll also be 3D printing. Hence, with molecules DNA, we'd be able to 3D print DNA, wouldn't we? We'd be able to sort of design organisms using 3D printers, and possibly even 3D print cells. And maybe we'll, if we're going to start like playing around with life and playing God, which frankly we have always been doing since the dawn of time, say the selective breeding of livestock and other animals. I see no real reason why this trend ought not continue if we're looking for, say, extremophilic forms of plant life that we can farm and that produce produce that we can consume, or like sorts of life which could be mobilized to terraform, say, Mars or something like this, or forms of life that are beneficial to us, like new crops that we could start cultivating on alien worlds, or this sort of thing. If we want to have sort of, or other exoplanets and whatnot, and if we want to begin that process, it might be a great benefit to us to begin 3D printing DNA and cells, and I think that's well within the bounds of possibility. I mean, what is a cell? It's not exactly a molecule, is it? It's like a collection of molecules, or a specific arrangement of molecules, isn't it? I mean, lipid bilayers of cell walls, they're like a palisades of stack of fat cells, or like not cells as such. Is it like those are molecules? I'm pretty certain. No, that they're fat-like in character, something. I'm no biologist, but I mean, it's very, very exciting. Like sort of thinking about this stuff, and in terms of like the 3D printing of biological matter, like 3D printing organs, that would be a huge benefit if we could do that. 3D printing organs. I know we can. There's sort of culturing hearts, or those experiments to see if you could grow a heart in a lab. That could be very, very interesting. Very, very good for everyone. And this was just coming up some thinking earlier on today, and I know I'm rambling a bit, but I always do. Sorry. About because my mother's in a wheelchair. She's tetraplegic. She has a C3 spinal cord injury. So I'm thinking like of ways of going about sort of say curing people with a condition like my mother's. She has a bruised portion of her spinal cord. So perhaps culturing nerve cells, neurons, and very carefully and very precisely cutting out the bruised areas and replacing them with new bits of nerve. How possible would that be, I wonder? I hope it's very possible, obviously, and that no one should have to live in a wheelchair or spend life in a wheelchair. That'd be very, very unfortunate if, those sorts of disabilities were to continue. I think, and obviously, that could be one way of going about it, possibly. I think of other things like nanosurgery and so on, and I write about all these ideas in my fiction. It'd be nicer to see us really go and push for things like that more. And I've obviously discussed the use of like scaling up 3D printing to produce huge rockets made of hemp thermoplastic in giant warehouses, or 3D printers the size of huge warehouses constructing aircraft and rockets. That'd be really cool to see, obviously. And we're doing already 3D printing parts of rockets, but I reckon as the sophistication in manufacturing increases, I suspect we're likely to be adapting the technology on larger and larger scales, if it becomes central to manufacturing, say, rocket parts now, it may well one day lead into the creation of entirely 3D printed rockets and other craft, maybe. I think. But I mean, yeah, technology is very, very cool. It's wonderful. It's one of the most wonderful things we have at our disposal, and science and engineering and mathematics and the rest of it. And it does just cause some concern with me when, like, because I proposed it, I tried to talk about this idea of chemical 3D printing with a flatmate of mine once, and she was like, "Oh, that'll never happen. That's impossible." I'm like, "Are you sure?" Real scientists and engineers have actually gone out and like done the research into whether or not this is possible, and they think it might be. You know, the computer wasn't invented by Charles Babbage. He created like a prototype of it, the analytic engine. The first working computer wouldn't be invented till like 60 years later with Alan Turing's invention of the computer at Bletchley Park during World War II. And so on. Like, ideas in science, like, very often it's like, it may have applications in the moment. And I think the sorts of things that get funded, like, ideally do have applications in the moment. But there's all sorts of other things that go on more on, say, the hinterlands of research that might not have any applications quite yet, or the utility of it hasn't quite become obvious yet, or the implications of it haven't quite become obvious yet, or there's technical hurdles to overcome with it, and later on, it becomes something which really does change the world for the better, and all that good stuff. So, yeah, I think, and if with 3D printing, always like, what? Who knows? Maybe we'll be 3D printing life, or like 3D printing human beings themselves, even. I mean, in terms of like, it's like this transportation argument, isn't it? This teleportation argument. You know, if you want to get from like one place, but the signal had to be transmitted at the speed of light, wouldn't it? So it wouldn't make any difference to your transit time. I should have pointed that out when I was writing an essay about Derek Parfit's idea. We wouldn't use teletransporters, and my essay response should have been just one sentence long. It's like, we'd never use teletransporters anyway, to transport anyone anywhere, because the signal must travel at the speed of light. Hence, if we can travel at the speed of light, which if we can create a teletransporter, we probably could do, we just travel there at the speed of light, and it'd take X amount of time. So the argument's sort of irrelevant to anything, but it's just a thought experiment anyway. So that is rambling, everyone. Thank you everyone for watching. Lovely to talk to you as always. Bye bye. Love you lot.